Hello and welcome to the side session hosted by the GSMA AgriTech program, AgriTech Trends in Latin America, Innovations Disrupting Smallholder Farming. My name is Panos Lukos. I'm the Senior Insights Manager of the GSMA AgriTech program, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Sonia Pietosi, Insights Manager of the GSMA AgriTech program, and an exciting lineup of guests. First of all, I would like to acknowledge our donors for the work we have done in Latin America. This initiative is currently funded by the Inter-American Development Bank and supported by the GSMA and its top members. We will start with a few words on the GSMA AgriTech program. After that, we have an important announcement to make on the launch of our latest reports. We have been working on for a number of months. And following that, we will move on to a number of spotlights on a number of different digital agriculture use cases. We will start with a spotlight on digital agriculture and a donor perspective. And then we will move on to an overview of digital agriculture use cases in Latin America with telecoms analyst Leslie Arathun. And after that, a spotlight on digital procurement with FarmForce. The report was launched only recently, and we will have the opportunity to talk about that and share some findings and insights from the report later on in the presentation. We will close today's session with a Q&A where our presenters and the GSMA crew will be ready to answer your questions. Let me now tell you a few words about the GSMA AgriTech program. Our vision over the next slides is to achieve equitable and sustainable food supply chains that empower farmers and strengthen local economies. To do that, we bring together and support agricultural sector stakeholders, including agribusinesses or cooperatives, the mobile industry, innovators and investors in the agritech space to launch, improve, and scale impactful and commercially sustainable digital solutions for smallholder farmers in low and middle income countries. How do we do this? We do this through a number of initiatives. Through our research and insights work, we inform the industry, service providers, investor communities, and donors on the operational and business models of digital agriculture that have the highest potential for impact and sustainability. We produce a vast amount of resources, all of which are available on the GSMA website in the resources page of our program, the AgriTech program. For example, on the left-hand side of this slide, you can see one of our recent publications. This is the State of the Sector report of digital agriculture in low and middle income countries. It's called Digital Agriculture Maps, and that's also available on the website with plenty of insights on the state of digital agriculture globally across a number of use cases, which we will see later on in the presentation. Another important part of our work is innovation funds and technical assistance. By providing funding and deep technical expertise to service providers, we support scalable, commercially sustainable solutions that impact smallholder farmers and the agricultural industry at large. Only last year, we launched an innovation fund with support from the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, the FCDO. The Innovation Fund was launched across Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia, and currently we have 7 grantees in a number of markets. Besides our research and technical assistance work I have just mentioned, we also facilitate partnerships, collaborations, and synergies between different actors operating in the global agritech ecosystem. Moving to the next slide now. where we can see the GSMA AgriTech areas of focus. Our first area of focus is that of digitization of the agricultural last mile, which we also call digitization of procurement activities. Our work here focuses on facilitating the transition from paper to digital for a number of systems and processes that happen in the intersection between buyers of crops and producers of crops. Specifically, we support the development of digital tools that enable real-time communication between buyers and producers, digital payments to producers, the farmers, and also digital records for farmers. Another area of focus is that of climate resilience and climate adaptation. We're working on testing and scaling models that use new data, new sources of data coming from mobile network operators or maybe satellite systems that can enable climate resilience or climate adaptation for smallholder farmers in low and middle income countries. Besides enabling better weather services, we're also interested in weather and crop insurance, while another area of interest is that of data-driven agriculture and IoT-enabled smart farming solutions. And we're going to talk about that later on in the side session. Crucially, one of the key areas of interest of the GSMA AgriTech program is that of supporting the financial inclusion of smallholder farmers. The digital agriculture solutions that I have just mentioned, for example, the digital procurement solutions, they capture a range of data points for the farm and the farmer that can help farmers to create an economic identity. The economic identities is actually the missing link in allowing farmers to access the formal financial sector and products and services that are important to them, as they will allow them to reinvest in their farms and increase their productivity and improve their livelihoods. We will now move to the first spotlight of today's session with the Inter-American Development Bank's Alejandro Escobar. Before we do that, I would like to remind everyone to share your questions in the Q&A function of the platform, and we will have time at the end of today's session to answer as many questions as possible. With this context, I would like to invite to the virtual stage our first speaker for today from the Inter-American Development Bank, Alejandro Escobar, who is Lead Investment and Operations Officer with the IDB Lab. Welcome, Alejandro.
Thank you very much for having me today.
The Inter-American Development Bank is the leading source of development financing for Latin America and the Caribbean. IDB Lab has funded the report we will be discussing today, called Landscaping the AgriTech Ecosystem for Smallholder Farmers in Latin America. Can you share IDB's motivation to commission this study, Alejandro?
Thank you, Panos, and thank you to GSMA for inviting me and participating of this very timely discussion. Several things have motivated us. I would say there are two key pieces of context that are important. Obviously, right now with COVID, the need to communicate and to be in contact with the rural areas is very important. But second, there's a gap in the research around access to financial services and access to tools for increased productivity by small farmers using AgTech. And we have done mapping ourselves of the AgTech space in Latin America, but it was very focused on large farmers, corporations, and looking primarily at countries like Brazil and Argentina. But we saw a need to understand what are the opportunities, what are the gaps, and the challenges to access technology and to access services from small farmers in the region, and particularly in Central America, countries that are very susceptible to climate change that are countries that are very much dependent on agriculture, and what are the opportunities and the gaps of AgTech in these regions?
IDB is particularly active in a number of sectors, one of which, of course, is agriculture, and it has a strong interest in climate change and environmental sustainability, among other topics. IDB is also keen to explore ways to support smallholder farmers in the region using digital technologies. Can you discuss IDB's activities in digital agriculture for smallholder farmers?
Yes, a little bit of background. The IDB has certainly worked in agriculture and small farmers and agricultural value chains for many years. For the past 15 years, we've worked a lot in developing value chains that link small farmers to markets. The IDB Lab, which is the group that I'm a part of, is primarily focused on working with private sector initiatives and interventions. A lot of our projects look for partners that are closely linked or working with small farmers. So oftentimes these can be corporations, these can be companies that are serving as intermediaries, it can be cooperatives or other aggregators. So our projects and what we seek to do in the region is test pilots, test innovations that can help farmers access services. Now, we talked about briefly the need for increased productivity and increased access to financial services. Even though we've been working in these areas for many years, there continues to be a large gap in access. And we believe that technology, the way it has been accelerating in the development, the appearance of tools, new tools being developed by both private and public sectors are really laying the ground for what could be the future of continuous support to the sector. So given that we have a kind of a sweet spot there working with the private sector and the smaller initiatives, we like to think that we can support the work of networks and of ecosystems in this space. So our work is focused on those particular sectors, and we're constantly looking for partnerships, organizations that are testing both technologies and services to access to small farmers. That is really what's behind our interest here, and I'm very glad to be participating of this discussion. I think there's a lot of information and also exchanges that can happen in this kind of medium.
Thank you for joining us, and hope you enjoyed today's session, Alejandro.
Thank you very much again.
We launched the report that I just mentioned only yesterday. This is a new resource that is based on the digital review of 131 digital agricultural tools aimed at smallholder farmers in Latin America, but especially in certain countries of Latin America, such as Central America and the Andean region, where digital agriculture is likely to deliver the highest social and economic impact. The report, which you can see on the left-hand side of this slide, provides a market mapping and landscape analysis of the most prominent cases of digital agriculture in Latin America and the Caribbean, and highlights some of the major trends of digital agriculture in the region. It also identifies two key opportunity areas where digital agriculture tools could deliver long-term sustainable benefits to smallholder farmers, and concludes with a set of recommendations. The report targets mainly investors and donors who are looking to identify AgriTech use cases and business models suited to smallholder farming. However, the report is also relevant to AgriTech, governments, agribusinesses, and mobile operators, and as it includes a selection of valuable insights that few studies offered before. Moving to the next slides, here in this slide, you can actually see the 5 digital agriculture use cases I mentioned earlier, starting from digital advisory all the way to smart farming. Below each of the use cases, you can also see a partial selection of digital agricultural tools aimed at smallholder farmers that are available in Latin America and the Caribbean. Obviously, the report offers many more tools, and I would highly recommend you visit and read that. Starting on the left, we have digital advisory. That refers to information-based services providing smallholders with agronomic advice, information on market prices, and weather information, among other topics. The second one is that of Agri-Digital Financial Services, or Agri-DFS. It refers to digitally enabled financial services for smallholder farmers to facilitate their inclusion in the formal financial economy and allow investment in farming activities. Most of the Agri-DFS that we have actually seen in Latin America and the Caribbean have been led by banks and fintechs, and you can see examples in this slide. The third area is that of digital procurement, and it refers to digital solutions in the agricultural last mile that enable a range of systems and processes to migrate and transition from paper to digital. Some agribusinesses have opted to develop tools in-house, proprietary tools, such as those developed by agribusinesses Ecom and Olam, that you can see in this slide, while others have actually opted to use third-party tools developed by AgriTech organizations with regional or global focus, one of which we're talking to later on, and that is FarmForce. The fourth use case is that of agri-e-commerce, and it refers to the use of digital platforms for buying and selling of inputs and produce online. And the fifth use case is that of smart farming, that refers to the use of sensors, drones, satellites, and other farm assets to generate and transmit data about a crop, an animal, a practice to support agricultural activities. On the Thrive platform, under Shorts, you can find an interview with smart farming AgriTech called FarmUp. Moving now to the next slides. In the next 2 slides, what we actually have is a selection of trends from 2 of the 5 digital agriculture use cases. In this current slide, you can see a selection of 3 trends from digital procurement, whereas in the next slide, we can see 4 trends from smart farming. What emerged from our recent review of digital agriculture tools in Latin America and the Caribbean is that new technologies are used to power digital procurement tools on the ground. For example, blockchain is increasingly used to manage sustainability efforts of agribusinesses, while satellites and drones are used to improve data collection. Under Trend 3, we also identified a need to Latin Americanize digital procurement solutions, especially those that were developed outside Latin America by global AgriTech with presence across a number of markets and regions. This is also relevant to AgriTech tools developed in-house by agribusinesses. For example, Ecom, one of the large agribusiness groups with presence in Latin America, is using its global integrity tool in Colombia, and they had to develop a separate tool to meet regulatory requirements, which complements integrity tool in that country. Moving to the next slide, which shows the trends in smart farming. And here we can only see a small selection of trends from those that appear in the report available on our website. Many of the smart farming tools launched in the region have actually focused on irrigation and pest control. For example, Telefónica's Smart Agro 4.0 initiative is actually present across a number of Latin American markets, Colombia, Peru, and El Salvador, and it is focused on irrigation. Despite the potential of smart farming to improve farm productivity, our research showed that most smart farming initiatives are still at pilot stage. The scaling of smart farming applications in rural areas relies on the availability of low-power wide area networks. These networks will support devices requiring low power consumption, long range, and low cost, all of which are critical for success in an agricultural setting. What emerged from our research is that smart farming tools currently in Latin America rely on a combination of cellular and unlicensed LPWA solutions. The last trend, trend number 4 in this slide, is that many smart farming solutions deployed in the region are capable of some level of automation. However, many of the companies interviewed did not feel that smallholder farmers were ready to automate, and recommendations for that reason were actually sent to the farmers. It was down to them to apply them in their farming activities. Now, two of the main vehicles for driving agricultural sector growth are higher productivity levels and greater financial inclusion. While selected countries in South America, for example, countries in the Southern Cone like Brazil and Uruguay, have made important productivity gains in recent years, productivity in places like Central America and selected Andean markets lags the rest of the region. One of the main challenges for smallholder farmers is the lack of access to productivity enhancing assets like irrigation systems and drones. Smart farming solutions, particularly IoT, can deliver climate smart technologies to smallholder farmers and allow them to monitor key parameters related to maximizing production, automate time-consuming activities, and pay the assets over time and remotely control them. When it comes to financial inclusion, account ownership at different institutions or through mobile money in Latin America is actually well below what the region's income levels would suggest, and well below that of countries with similar income levels. For example, Ghana, that has an account ownership rate of 58%, that is higher than that of Nicaragua, of a slightly higher GDP, and an account ownership rate of just 31%. What smallholder farmers are missing is data that can prove their credit worthiness to financial service providers. However, digital agriculture tools, and especially digital procurement tools that we saw earlier, capture a wealth of farm and farmer data. This digital footprint can help establish economic identities for farmers, and when shared with a financial service provider, it can be used to establish creditworthiness, perform risk assessments, and allow farmers to access financial services like credit and insurance. These and more insights on how digital agriculture can support smallholder farmers in Latin America are available in the reports. We will now move to the next part of our session that includes an overview of digital agriculture tools in Latin America with Leslie Arathun. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Panos.
Welcome to the GSMA AgriTech site session. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic, thank you. So you're a telecoms analyst. You actually worked on this study. You have a very good knowledge of digital agriculture in Latin America. For many people, especially those who are based outside the region, there is a misconception that Latin America is a very homogeneous region. And that is also based on the fact that the region actually shares a lot of cultural heritage and language, the Spanish language in most of the countries. What emerged from the research is that Latin America is actually a vast and diverse region. And I wanted to ask you, what kind of intra-regional differences do you see in Latin America, or have you actually seen during this research?
Thanks for the question. There were quite a few regional differences, and that manifested itself in different tools that were applicable to different parts of Latin America, starting with just the topography and the climate of the different regions. So if you go to the southern cone, you have more plains. It's a more moderate climate, and so that's really suitable for large-scale farming. And so you have crops like livestock, a lot of soybeans that are produced in that area, and some wineries and so forth that are suitable for that region. As you start moving north, you start getting into more tropical climates. So in the Andean, you have tropical climates, you have some dry corridors, you have some mountainous regions, and that has lent itself to the production of a different set of crops. So you see a lot of coffee, cocoa to a certain extent, a lot of fruits and vegetables, and flowers. Colombia and Ecuador are the second and third largest producers of flowers after the Netherlands. As you continue up north into Central America, you also have kind of volcanic areas. You have tropical regions, and that lends itself to a different set of crops, including fruits and vegetables, coffee, increasingly cocoa, palm oil, sugar. Because of the different climates and the different crops, you also have a different structure to the market. So in the southern cone, you have more large-scale mechanized farming, so huge farms, very mechanized, leading with technology. But as you move further up north, you have a higher prevalence of smallholder farming. So if you look at the average size of a farm in, say, the Caribbean or Central America, you're looking at 1 to 3 hectares. As you move south to South America, you're looking at 20 plus hectares. So, those are some of the differences that you see across the region.
Very interesting. And during the research phase, we managed to actually talk to a number of different stakeholders. And in the report, we're actually presenting a number of different trends across the 5 digital agriculture use cases. And earlier on, we presented some of these trends for 2 of the 5 use cases, digital procurement and smart farming. I wanted to ask you, can you name 2 of the many trends that one can find in the report that you found particularly interesting yourself, and why was that?
I think there's a couple of trends that were really interesting. One is just, you hear a lot about Argentina and Brazil as being big hubs of AgTech innovation. And there is a lot going on there, but it tends to be aimed at large-scale farming. So what we found is that Colombia actually has emerged as an innovation hub for more of a smallholder type of solution. So in Colombia, due to a number of factors, you have a favorable regulatory environment, you have kind of a rising middle class and urbanization levels that lead to higher incomes and thus higher purchasing power. You have kind of a broad mixture of crops. You have a nascent AgriTech investment ecosystem that's been forming. And so the result of all of that is much more innovation. We saw, more than a dozen agri-e-commerce startups in that market. We saw a lot of digital financial services in that market that we didn't see in other places. And so Colombia really has emerged as an important hub for innovation, and that innovation is being exported to Central America and other parts of the region. The other trend that I think was really interesting was related to smart farming. And you talked about some of the trends earlier, but it's just the impact that smart farming can have on productivity levels. One of the things we did early on was compare productivity in Latin America relative to Asia and Africa, and the productivity levels don't quite meet up to some of those standards. And so we found that smart farming can really be a tool to help with that. And so I know a lot of the cases are pilots, but the results are very instructive. Telefonica, working with the FAO in 3 markets, as you mentioned earlier, they've had really strong results. In Guatemala, in Colombia, they've been working with coffee farmers, and they've seen a dramatic 50% increase in productivity there, as well as a 20% decrease in costs associated with irrigation, from the use of IoT sensors to measure soil quality and precipitation levels and other indicators. FAO applied those same IoT sensors in Peru, but in the cotton industry. And there they saw a 77% increase in productivity. In El Salvador, they also used the IoT sensors for some fresh produce smallholder farmers. And there they found that the farmers using the IoT technology had productivity improvements of 80% higher productivity rates than neighboring farmers not using IoT. So the potential for IoT to really bridge the productivity divide is one of the more interesting findings, I think, from the research.
Thanks for the reference to smart farming. Smart farming tools can support farmers increase farm productivity, create efficiencies in the field. Do you see any challenges that smart farming implementers may actually face in the design, launch, and scale up of smart farming solutions?
Mm-hmm. They do face a number of challenges. So we interviewed several of the organizations launching smart farming. And one of the key barriers really is just the cost of the sensor. So the cost of the sensor is generally considered prohibitive for a smallholder farmer. So a large farm in Brazil and Argentina can absorb the sensor. If they need to install gateways to extend the reach of the network, they can do that. That's not quite the case for smallholders. And so talking to some of the people on the ground, we were told that the price point really has to be below $100 for the sensor and probably closer to $50 for you to start seeing some wide-scale adoption. The second barrier is related to the cost of the data services. So in one of the cases that we looked at, the monthly fee for the data service was $10 per month. Because it had to use a cellular network, which wasn't quite built for that. And so that cost is just too high for most smallholders. Other barriers include the limited reach of the network. So one of the key solutions for wide-scale deployment of smart farming IoT solutions is low power wide access networks, especially NB-IoT and LTE-M networks. And the build out of those networks thus far has been limited to some of the larger markets. So as we see those networks continue to be built out by the leading players in the region to some of the smaller markets, we think that that will open the doors for more smart farming deployment. And then I think just the kind of digital literacy and technical skill set of farmers. The average smallholder in Latin America is over 50 years old. And so their technical competency is not necessarily that of younger folks. That's one of the things that Telefonica found when it did the first pilot is they had some challenges in getting people to understand the sensors, implement the recommendations, and kind of follow through with them. They found some people moving the sensor to a different location and not alerting Telefonica about that or the FAO. So in subsequent iterations, they worked with a younger group of smallholders who really understood and embraced the technology. So that's another barrier, and all of those are slowly being overcome. But I think, from what we could see, smart farming could have a big impact on productivity.
Fantastic. You mentioned Telefonica quite a few times, and definitely mobile operators can do a lot more in digital agriculture in that space. I was wondering, focusing on mobile operators, what role can they play in the deployment of digital agriculture solutions across any of the 5 use cases we mentioned earlier?
So I think MNOs have a big role to play. They have a lot of assets at their disposal. They have the network connectivity, which is a big one. They have customer relationships. They have sales and marketing assets. In the case of mobile money, they have mobile money networks of agents at their disposal. They have billing platforms that they can leverage. These are all assets that can be brought to bear with a lot of digital agriculture solutions. And we did hear from some of the AgriTech startups in the region that they would like increased collaboration with MNOs. So I think there is a role that they can play, and we're starting to see that happen. So Telefonica, as we've mentioned a few times now, worked with the FAO on the Smart Agro 4.0 project. And that partnership worked really well. So Telefonica brought the technical expertise, the network assets, the agronomist actually that was reading some of the findings and some of the other assets, whereas the FAO brought their understanding of rural areas, smallholder farmers and others to the table. So that partnership has worked well. The other role that Telefonica is playing in the region is just as an incubator or accelerator. So they've provided some financing to some of the AgriTech startups, like a company called Celotor in Colombia. So that's another way that they can play an increased role.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the time we have today for this spotlight, the overview of digital agriculture in Latin America. Thank you so much for joining us, Leslie.
Thanks, Panos.
I would now like to welcome our next guest, Pilar Castillo, Head of Sales and Marketing at AgriTech organization FarmForce. Welcome to our virtual stage, Pilar. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Panos. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, FarmForce is the name of the organization and the AgriTech tool active in digital procurement. Can you describe the FarmForce solution and the pain points it aims to address?
Okay, so FarmForce is a cloud-based digital sourcing platform. Our solution is comprised of two elements. One is a mobile app, which is used typically by field staff who visit the farmers and collect the information on the mobile app. It's very easy and robust tool. You can use it with no connectivity for days and weeks at a time, and it will reliably collect data on the mobile app, and then it will sync on the cloud once there is connectivity. What is really wonderful about the solution is that it replaces paper-based systems that are currently in use in many geographies around the world, and it just makes it very simple to maintain a very up-to-date, clean database of everything that you need to know from your sourcing processes on the ground. Also, we work with organizations on the ground that are either buyers of crops or international NGOs. So they work with a lot of smallholder farmers on the ground, and they need to have one kind of integrated tool where they can have the ability to see aggregated data of all the farmers that they work with. So we have we're managing currently over 550,000 farmers in our platform. We've done over 150 deployments already around the world. We have our platform already in 15 languages. That includes Spanish or Portuguese, which are very relevant to Latin America. And we have active deployments in 33 countries around the world.
FarmForce tool captures lots of data, farm and farmer level data. And these data can be used to support farmers' pathway to financial inclusion. Can you tell us more about the work that FarmForce does in this space?
We have organizations that we work with in Latin America. For example, Acceso in Haiti, which works with around 8,000 farmers. They provide loans to the farmers themselves. So it's really critical for them to be able to extend these loans at the beginning of the season. So when the farmers come and deliver harvest, the loans can be deducted from that. It's a really useful functionality with clients, not only in Latin America, but around the world. We also see that particularly our international NGO customers are using the data, the different type of data collected in the system to help farmers and co-ops themselves become entities. So they use the system, they use the data that has been collected on the ground in FarmForce, and they take this digital data to banks and in order to create a credit identity. And so the aim here is that it's not a loan provided through an agribusiness, but it's actually a formal relationship that is established between the co-ops and farms and the actual lending entities in themselves.
During our research phase, we examined more than 130 digital agricultural tools in Latin America across a number of markets that are deployed to address the challenges of smallholder farmers. FarmForce has been active in a number of Latin American markets. What success criteria played a role in your efforts to roll out or scale up FarmForce's solution?
First of all, having our solution in the languages and that apply, in this case, Spanish and Portuguese in Latin America, but also having like a local presence. We have a regional team in Guatemala City, and we have partners in Brazil. So it means that whenever we are doing deployments in Latin America in Spanish or in Portuguese, we really do have the local knowledge. Our team knows, basically value chains for not only cocoa and coffee, which are the main ones, but many others. So we really know how to help organizations translate their pain points from having paper-based systems to move into a digital system, but also with the added value of knowing exactly how things work on the ground, and also understand the users of the system, because there is a difference there. Like when we have mobile users, typically they may require a little bit extra effort from our side. They don't have a degree on kind of IT systems. Our platform is very easy to use, but we also have the capability of when we're doing the training, that is very much geared towards helping everyone, whether they are advanced or they're kind of like a low level, to come up to speed with the platform and to really utilize it and draw value from it.
You're talking here about tech literacy and digital literacy, which are massively important, and that came up several times across our research. We also noticed that many successful services have relied on partnerships between value chain actors, such as AgriTech organizations, agribusinesses, and mobile operators that you mentioned just now. How important are partnerships in the commercialization of a digital procurement tool like that of FarmForce?
Yeah, very important. Typically in Latin America, we partner with agribusinesses that have specific needs, whether that is help with managing different certifications on the ground, whether that is need with like measuring their impact. All of this is hugely important for us, and we really work with them to try to find the best solution for them through FarmForce. Apart from that, we also engage quite significantly with other types of organizations. For example, we have a kind of a long-standing partnership with IFC. It's not only about kind of having the enabling platform to help them collect and manage data, but it's also about the change management that needs to happen. We do a lot of work with the local organizations that, let's say, IFC or other like regional impact investment funds are investing into, let's say, a local agribusiness. And we manage the whole, the change management that needs to happen with these organizations, from basically, this is what a digital system will bring for you in terms of value, and then also help them come up to speed with how do they use it, how do they extract the most value from it. NGOs are also really good at kind of basically they have a clear mandate to have impact on the ground, and they really they utilize the information on farm force to be able to make better decisions in terms of what works best on the ground. If they want to have like lending schemes to farmers, or if they want to have more targeted training, or if they want to have better agricultural practices, the data on farm force allow them to do that.
And specifically talking about mobile operators and about connectivity, and that is basically what powers the Farm Force solution on the ground. What are the opportunities for collaboration with the mobile industry?
We certainly see the mobile industry as also very, very important part of the mix here, because I mean, in Latin America, mobile operators have really large and extensive networks. Our platform has really helped in kind of COVID outreach and capacity building in rural communities, where the SMS functionality, the survey functionality, it has really helped to reach out to farmers and inquire how you're doing, how is this affecting you, and they can reply back with an SMS to kind of show that, okay, yeah, we have really been affected by this. It has been really difficult for our farming operations. And you can also disseminate all type of information in terms of like health and safety, how to look after yourself, how to protect your family. So I think that we have a really good product, and partnering with mobile operators will mean that we can really take the capabilities of our product to reach an audience that it's hard to reach unless you have partners. And we also see that there's a lot of innovation that can really come from engaging with mobile operators. They can access these groups, and we are a for-profit company. We're a commercial entity, but we really have impact as part of our DNA. So being able to kind of partner with mobile operators and look at how can we create value for farmers is something that we really want to explore.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the insights you shared with us. And I hope you enjoyed today's session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really enjoy being here.
That's a really good question. And Pilar earlier actually did mention some insights from the work that FarmForce does related to COVID-19. Farmers, smallholder farmers especially, traditionally have relied a lot on face-to-face interactions. And that has been the case in Latin America as well as in other regions. Now, when stay-at-home orders came into force earlier this year in 2020 with the onset of the pandemic in Latin America, many of the farmers were forced to rely more on digital solutions to communicate with other farmers, with their buyers, and other organizations in the broader AgriTech ecosystem. And that actually made farmers more open to adopting digital technologies. Shoppers also increasingly rely a lot on e-commerce platforms for the delivery of groceries, because many consumers don't want to go to supermarkets or other places to buy foods and groceries. So e-commerce has also seen a significant growth as an AgriTech, one of the 5 AgriTech use cases, digital agriculture use cases. Now, it is also worth saying that in certain markets in Latin America and certain organizations that we spoke to as part of the study and the research we did, they actually communicated to us e-commerce digital agriculture platforms that there has been a shift over the last few months from organizations, e-commerce organizations, AgriTech, serving B2B2C customers, such as restaurants and hotels and so on, to actually serving consumers, so to the B2C space. And that is because of many of the initial clients of those organizations, the restaurants, the hotels, the hospitals, and so on, they were under operating, or there were restrictions in accessing them, such as with the hospitals, or maybe they were actually shut, as was the case with many hotels and restaurants. So that was the case. Also, another different kind of trend that we saw in Latin America that came up throughout the research study.
Thank you very much. Apologies everyone for the technical glitches. Now you can hear me, I see. We are back. So I was saying, if nobody would like to jump on the COVID-19 related question, we can proceed to the next one. One of our attendees was asking, AgriTech solutions can be very helpful to farmers, but who pays for them? It is difficult to charge farmers. So what is your experience about pricings and business models? Who would like to jump in on this?
I can take that one. So we did
Go ahead.
On the business models themselves, and as the questioner rightly pointed out, it's very difficult to run a successful business model that relies on having the farmer pay for the services. So through all the research that we did, we found very little appetite on the part of the farmer to pay for any of these services. So there's a lot of different models that were used. Some of it targeted the agribusinesses. So even though the service was aimed at the farmer, the agribusiness is paying for the service. And they see the benefits that come from having greater productivity, moving information from paper to digital. In other business models, the insights are monetized. So through the tool, you collect a lot of information on the farmer. And so it's those insights that are monetized and later sold to input suppliers or agribusinesses or governments or other institutions, multilateral organizations. So that's a different business model. I think there was a question on the sensors and the cost of sensors and that being prohibitive. There are also some of the companies that we spoke to are experimenting with a pay-as-you-go type of model, so or a IoT as a service type of model. So instead of paying for the IoT sensors and perhaps the gateway and the service all upfront, what you do is you pay a low monthly fee, and then that gives you access to the service, the sensors, and kind of the advice that you get as part of that. So I think there's a lot of innovation going on in the region. There's a lot of different models that can be applied. I think the important piece, one of the things that we learned is to make sure that the smallholder is kind of the center of the service design, and their needs are kind of listened to and addressed through the solution being deployed.
Thank you, Leslie. Pilar, you wanted to jump in as well?
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was just saying I wanted to add a little bit there, because I think that agribusinesses are certainly the major actor there paying for these digitization services. The other ones that we see coming up are impact investors that really see like the agri sector as a growth sector. And they're looking to see how can they support local agribusinesses in these different markets to professionalize and digitize as part of this, and have really digital data to make data-driven decisions. The other ones that we're seeing is international NGOs that have donor money and are seeing like the impact on the ground with farmers, really requiring data to be able to inform professionalization decisions. So I will add those two as well to the mix in terms of like who pays for it.
Thank you very much, Pilar. We are a bit over time, but we can quickly take our last question. Thomas asked, you mentioned that sensors do bring a significant improvement in farmers' productivity. However, the cost seems to be a big adoption barrier. Have you seen cases of financial institutions financing the purchase of sensors? And if not, what are, in your opinion, the main reasons? Who would like to take this one? Leslie, thank you.
So as part of the research that we did find some financial institutions, and Alejandro might be able to speak a little bit more about some specific examples, but we did find some financial institutions willing to help finance some of the upfront costs, including the sensors. And then when we were talking to the businesses, and I'm thinking of one in particular, there's a thesis in Peru that operates on Lake Titicaca. So they have trout farming. And so they put the IoT sensors in the trout cages in the water, and they measure kind of water levels and make sure that there's no overfeeding and development of algae, and that reduces fish deaths, overfeeding. So there's a big reduction in cost. And they've received the support of the IDB lab to kind of support that initiative, working with the Japanese technical company. So technology company. So there are initiatives like that that we've seen on the ground.
Yes, I would say that financial institutions that have a strong exposure to a particular crop, say coffee, or a crop that is a very high value added, that is a very important part of their portfolio lending, I've seen a couple of cases where they have a strong motivation to keep track and monitor this kind of information for the benefit of their own portfolio management. So it's not something that the farmers pay for sure, and not even the aggregators, because there may be several buyers. But the financial institutions who have a large exposure to the ag sector in these particular crops may have that interest in, and we're seeing a lot more of this definite cross partnership between financial entities and the buyers who are buying and who are exporting or marketing products, who have a common interest in making sure that there's information available around the crops that they're financing. A lot of opportunities there.
Thank you very much. We also have another question for the last few minutes. What is the strategy towards prioritizing value chains in countries for digital interventions? Alejandro, could you please tell us the perspective from IDB on this?
Again, I think the study reveals, and from what I'm hearing from my colleagues here, is that there's got to be a strong business case for the adoption of digital technologies and tech in general. And this often happens, I would say most of it happens in specific value chains. So where there's where you can actually monetize some of the information that is being produced out of the technology, can be monetized and can be added to the final price that is being paid or that is being transacted at the farm level. Obviously, the closer the farms are to, the closer the price at the gate of the farm is in terms of the final market price, there's going to be more room for like kind of monetizing that value. So definitely value chains in which there is a lot of investment already. Some of these could be commodities like coffee or bananas, but they also could be very high value added products like blueberries or asparagus, which is grown by both small and medium-sized farmers in some of these countries. So I think, at least from our perspective from the IDB, we've tried to tie our interventions to very specific value chains where the business case is very clear, and where some of the actors can eventually monetize some of this and adopt that technology. Because I think you're all right. I think it's going to be very hard for farmers to pay for this, but in any case, it's those other actors along the value chain who are going to be kind of making or adopting these technologies.
Thank you. Yes,
I wonder if I
Pilar.
can add something. Yes.
Sure.
Just to kind of complement what Alejandro was saying, I think that what we're seeing from our perspective is that you have the industries where we see like where digitization comes further in like the pecking order, when in industries where there's a real end consumer pressure to do this. And we typically see that in cocoa and coffee. And sometimes in other kind of value chains, but in those that are commodity type of value chains, it's much harder. And so because, you know, when, for example, the kind of like, oh, how sustainable is your coffee or your chocolate treat? It kind of, it touches a lot of kind of consumers' hearts for some reason. And our experience at least is that cocoa and coffee are typically the kind of the sectors where are really further ahead in terms of digitization, and that comes from like clear end consumer pressure, particularly in Europe and in the US, and that really drives a lot of kind of like the digitization in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, in these kind of centers of production.
Thank you very much, and our time is come to an end. So thank you very much to all our speakers for joining us today. From myself and on behalf of the entire GSMA AgriTech team, and of course, thanks to all our attendees. Remember to check our report available online and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.